India's President Draupadi Murmu on Wednesday recounted the country's achievements in an hour and 13-minute long address to a joint sitting of both houses of the country's parliament. Lawmakers reserved the loudest cheers for the president when she hailed the passage of the Women's Reservation Bill and consecration of the new Ram Temple in Ayodhya. The budget session of India's parliament began with President Draupadi Murmu's address to a joint sitting of both houses of parliament, the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. It was the first time the president delivered the address from the new parliament building. The Sengol was carried into the house as the president made her way inside, followed by the vice president, prime minister and speaker. The Sengol is a gold-plated silver spectre that is installed in the new parliament house in New Delhi. Seers from the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu had gifted it to the country's first prime minister on the eve of the country's independence from British rule in 1947. President Murmu began her 73-minute address by hoping that the new home of India's parliament will be witness to a productive dialogue on policies. She said, amidst serious global crisis, India emerged as the fastest-growing major economy.
दुनिया में गंभीर संकटों के बीच भारत सबसे तेजी से विकसित होती बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था बना। बीते 10 वर्षों में हमने भारत को फ्रेजाइल 5 से निकलकर टॉप 5 इकोनॉमीज में शामिल होते देखा।
Investments in digital infrastructure were another of the government's achievements. Today, 46% of the world's total real-time digital transactions take place in India.
डिजिटल इंडिया ने भारत में जीवन और बिजनेस दोनों को बहुत आसान बना दिया है। आज पूरी दुनिया मानती है कि ये भारत की बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है। डिजिटल इंडिया के कारण बैंकिंग आसान हुई है और लेन-देन भी सरल हुआ है।
She said that India's achievements today are an outcome of the government's endeavors in the last decade, and the country has witnessed eradication of poverty on a massive scale.
हम जीवन में पहली बार बड़े पैमाने पर गरीबी को दूर होने देख रहे हैं। नीति आयोग के अनुसार मेरी सरकार के एक दशक के कार्यकाल में करीब 25 करोड़ देशवासी गरीबी से बाहर निकले।
Lawmakers reserved the loudest cheer for the president when she hailed the construction of a new Ram Temple at Ayodhya.
पिछले 10 वर्षों में भारत ने राष्ट्रहित में ऐसे अनेक कार्यों को पूरा होते हुए देखा है जिनका इंतजार देश के लोगों को दशकों से था। राम मंदिर के निर्माण की आकांक्षा सदियों से थी, आज ये सोच हो चुका है।
President Murmu said that the government has empowered daughters everywhere in water, land, sky and space. Women-led development was a key focus area of the government.
नारी शक्ति का सामर्थ्य बढ़ाने के लिए मेरी सरकार हर स्तर पर काम कर रही है। इस वर्ष की गणतंत्र दिवस परेड भी नारी शक्ति के लिए समर्पित थी।
Listing the government's performance in healthcare, President Murmu said that in addition to the Ayushman Bharat scheme, the central government is also providing free treatment in various hospitals.
केंद्र सरकार विभिन्न हॉस्पिटल्स में मुफ्त इलाज की सुविधा देती है। इससे देश के नागरिकों के 3.5 लाख करोड़ रुपया खर्च होने से बचे हैं।
She also said that in the past decade, the number of MBBS seats has more than doubled.
पिछले दशक में 16 एम्स और 315 मेडिकल कॉलेज स्थापित किए गए। पिछले दशक में MBBS की सीटों में 2 गुना से भी अधिक की वृद्धि हुई है।
President Murmu also said that the country has emerged as a leading voice against terrorism.
आज आतंकवाद के खिलाफ भारत दुनिया के एक प्रमुख आवाज है। आतंकवाद हो या विस्तारवाद, हमारी सेनाएं आज जैसे हो तैसा की नीति के साथ जवाब दे रही है।
President's joint session comes just a day ahead of the interim budget. On Thursday, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will present India's Interim Budget 2024. Bureau Report, DD India. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will present the Interim Budget 2024 on Thursday. This will be the last budget before parliamentary elections for India's lower house of parliament. As the country is achieving new heights of development, people associated with different sectors have high hopes from this budget. Have a look.
India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is all set to present the interim budget on Thursday. Finance Minister's budget on February 1 would come at a time when country is consistently progressing and reaching new heights of development. Prime Minister Narendra Modi urged all members of Parliament to act in the best interest of country during budget session.
साथियों, मुझे विश्वास है कि देश नित्य प्रगति की नई नई ऊंचाइयों को पार करता हुआ आगे बढ़ रहा है। सर्वस्पर्शी विकास हो रहा है, सर्वांगीण विकास हो रहा है, सर्वसमावेशक विकास हो रहा है। ये यात्रा जनता जनार्दन के आशीर्वाद से निरंतर बनी रहेगी।
Major structural reforms taken by the government in last 10 years have helped in transforming the country from fragile 5 to a top 5 economy. India emerged as the fastest growing major economy, consistently maintaining a growth rate of over 7.5% for 2 consecutive quarters. Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat campaigns have become India's strengths. During the last decade, there has been a 5-fold increase in mobile phone manufacturing. Today, India is the world's second largest producer of mobile phones. A few years ago, India used to import toys. Today, India is exporting made in India toys. The country now has one country, one tax law in the form of GST. Number of people filing income tax return has increased. Government has ensured macroeconomic stability. Today, India has forex reserves in excess of $600 billion. India's exports have increased from about $450 billion to more than $775 billion. Investors, traders, and common man have high expectations from the budget. People in every sectors, including health, agriculture, education, and defense sectors, are eagerly awaiting the presentation of interim budget.
A greater participation of the private sector in defense production. This can actually boost defense production to such an extent, and it will lead to an Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense production.
And as we speak, a year down the line, India happens to be one of the fastest growing electric vehicle market in the world. We have grown at a growth rate of 50%, wherein the world has grown by roughly around 30-31% in terms of the growth in the electric vehicles. So this is one industry which will significantly contribute towards achieving the net zero commitment that we have made for ourselves till 2070. And this is one industry which cannot be missed by the Honorable Finance Minister when she comes out with the budget or the interim budget declaration.
Thursday's budget will be an interim budget since election time is near. On a high note, Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed hope that his government will present full budget for the country after the formation of the new government. Bureau Report, DD India.
The budget to be presented by Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman today will actually be an interim budget. Like the previous 3 full union budgets, the interim budget 2024 will also be tabled in digital mode. Find out in our next report how an interim budget is different from a full-fledged budget.
Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be setting a record when she rises to present her 6th budget on February 1st, 2024, a feat achieved so far only by former Prime Minister of India, Morarji Desai. She will surpass the records of her predecessors, Manmohan Singh, Arun Jaitley, P. Chidambaram, Yashwant Sinha, who had presented 5 budgets in a row. But the budget to be presented by Union Finance Minister on 1st of February will actually be an interim budget. Being an interim budget before the approaching general elections, major policy announcements are unlikely. Let's now tell you how an interim budget is different from a full-year budget. A budget consists of 2 parts, the income and expenses of the government for the previous year and the expected income and expenses for the coming year. An interim budget also shows the previous year's income and expenses, but it shows only the most basic expenses up until the general election. An interim budget is presented when general elections are very near. It is an effective mechanism that allows the ruling government to ask Parliament for approval of funds sufficient to incur expenditure for part of the year till a new government is formed after the general elections. So an interim budget takes the place of a full budget if general elections are approaching. The full budget for fiscal year 2025 will be presented after the formation of the new government following the general elections. During an election year, it is unrealistic for the ruling government to prepare a full year budget. Nirmala Sitharaman took over the finance portfolio in Prime Minister Narendra Modi's second term. It will be her fourth paperless budget, as like the previous three full union budgets, the interim union budget 2024 will also be tabled in digital mode. Tanvi Taneja for DD India.
The gross goods and services tax, GST revenue collected in the month of January 2024 is over 1,72,000 crore rupees, and that shows a 10.4% year-on-year growth over the revenue collected in January 2023. Notably, this is the second highest monthly collection ever and is the third month in the current financial year in which more than 1.7 lakh crore rupees have been mopped up. The cumulative gross GST collection from April 2023 to January 2024 witnessed an impressive 11.6% year-on-year growth, mopping up 16.69 lakh crore rupees. So the GST revenue continues to be buoyant. International news now. U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said the drone deal offers significant potential to further advance strategic technology cooperation with India and military cooperation in the region.
So I'll say that generally the U.S.-India defense partnership has seen significant growth over the past decade. This is a proposed sale that was announced during Prime Minister Modi's visit last year. We believe it offers significant potential to further advance strategic technology cooperation with India and military cooperation in the region. Of course, Congress plays, as you know, an important role in the U.S. arms transfer process. We routinely consult with members of Congress on the Foreign Affairs Committees before our formal notification so we can address questions that they might have. But I don't have any comment on when that formal notification might take place.
And let's now take a look at some other stories making news today. Amrit Udyan set to reopen, showcasing blooming flowers and attractions for the public viewing from February 2 to the 31st of January this year, except Mondays. Rashtrapati Bhavan's gardens feature roses, tulips and other seasonal blooms as part of beautification efforts. Key attractions include a 225-year-old shisham tree, a floral clock and a selfie point. Tourists flocked to Indian hill towns as fresh snow blanketed parts of the Himalayan states after a prolonged dry spell. Visitors enjoyed outdoor winter activities like snow fighting and pony riding as businesses welcomed the surge in crowds. The arrival of the first significant snowfall in mid-January delighted both locals and tourists, marking a departure from the unusual absence of snow. On Wednesday, Delhi experienced a shift in weather as foggy conditions transformed into heavy rainfall across the national capital and nearby areas. Heavy downpour, thunderstorms and chill compound winter woes in Delhi, causing road blockages and waterlogging, worsening city life amidst harsh conditions. Time for a breather on DD India News Hour. Coming up after a break, why are farmer protests spreading in Europe? Know why California is bracing for a sustained spell of heavy rain and snowfall. And England spinner Jack Leach ruled out of the second test against India due to injury. In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world, one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called on Wednesday for the closure of the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency, UNRWA, as his forces conducted more airstrikes in Gaza amid release of hostages in the enclave. Donors, including the United States, have paused funding pending an investigation, but aid agencies say ending UNRWA operations would wreak humanitarian efforts in devastated Gaza. Donors are demanding a swift investigation before resuming funding. Israel has accused some UNRWA staff of involvement in the October 7 Hamas assault in southern Israel. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu says the UNRWA's mission must be terminated.
It's time that the international community and the UN itself understand that UNRWA's mission has to end. It is self-perpetuating also in its desire to keep alive the Palestinian refugee issue. And we need to get other UN agencies and other aid agencies replacing UNRWA if we're going to solve the problem of Gaza as we intend to do.
Israel welcomes the decision of many countries to suspend their funding to UNRWA and calls for an in-depth, independent and transparent investigation into the agency's conduct in the Gaza Strip, both regarding the involvement of UNRWA employees in the October 7th massacre and regarding the employment of Hamas operatives and the involvement of terrorist elements in its activities.
United States National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met a top Israeli official Ron Dermer in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. White House spokesperson John Kirby, during a briefing, said that the meeting between Sullivan and Dermer focused on the delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza and advancing negotiations for the release of hostages taken by Hamas. The meeting comes on the heels of Jake's meeting with the families of the American hostages and his discussion with the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Al Thani, on Tuesday to reach a deal for the release of the hostages held since the conflict between Hamas and Israel erupted on the 7th of October.
The National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan had a chance to meet today with the Israeli Minister for Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, while he was here in town. They, of course, discussed the situation on the ground in Gaza, also had an opportunity to talk about continued efforts to increase the flow of humanitarian assistance into the people of Gaza. And, of course, they talked about our ongoing collective efforts to get all the hostages released, get them back home with their families where they belong, and those negotiations and discussions are certainly ongoing right now.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and UN Coordinator Sigrid Kaag on Wednesday discussed optimizing humanitarian aid and post-conflict reconstruction in Gaza. Blinken committed to swift collaboration with Israel and Egypt to ensure aid in Gaza, while the UN envoy highlighted challenges and stressed collaboration with the Security Council.
We'll be working very closely with Sigrid, with Israel, with Egypt, with other concerned parties, in the first instance to maximize the assistance that's getting in, but not only getting into Gaza, getting to people who need it within Gaza, including in the north. And in that, the United Nations remains an essential and vital partner. At the same time, we have to work through the terrible allegations that have been raised with regard to some UNRWA personnel. That's absolutely essential, and we'll be looking to see that the necessary work is done to deal with that and address that situation.
Now, there are a number of issues we also need to keep talking about, and that is deconfliction, safe conditions to deliver aid, not only for the humanitarian workers, but also for those who receive it. We also need to talk about aid diversion. Any potential risk that aid gets into the wrong hand needs to be prevented, and if it happens, we need to act very swiftly in a very transparent and credible manner.
Houthis of Yemen on Wednesday claimed that their naval forces carried out an operation targeting a U.S. merchant vessel. In a statement released by the Houthi military spokesperson, Yahya Sarriah said that the Yemeni armed forces had targeted an American merchant ship called Koi headed to the Palestinian territory. He further added that Yemen would not hesitate to retaliate against British-American escalation. Earlier, the U.S. Central Command said in a statement that its forces had destroyed Yemen's Houthi surface-to-air missile, which was prepared for launch.
The naval forces of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a specific military operation targeting an American merchant ship, KOI, that was heading to the ports of occupied Palestine with several appropriate naval missiles that directly hit the vessel. This operation occurred just a few hours after Yemeni naval forces have targeted with several naval missiles the American destroyer USS Gravely in the Red Sea, and hit was accurate and direct.
Judges of the top UN court on Wednesday found Russia violated elements of a UN anti-terrorism treaty. However, in allegations brought to the International Court of Justice by Ukraine, judges declined to rule on allegations brought by Kiev that Moscow was responsible for the shooting down of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 over eastern Ukraine in 2014. In the same ruling, judges at the International Court of Justice found that Russia had breached an anti-discrimination treaty by failing to support Ukrainian language education in Crimea after its 2014 annexation of the peninsula. The decisions were a legal setback for Kiev. The court rejected Ukraine's requests to order reparations for both violations and only ordered Russia to comply with the treaties. Ukraine had filed a lawsuit at the ICJ, also known as the World Court, in 2017. It had accused Russia of violating an anti-terrorism treaty by funding pro-Russian separatists in Ukraine. Italian farmers have joined the French farmers' protest movement to demand easing environmental rules and protection from rising costs and cheap imports. They argue that they face unfair competition from rivals due to varying environmental standards among EU states. The EU's Executive Commission has proposed limiting farm imports from Ukraine and loosening some green regulations ahead of a summit on the 1st of February, that is today.
We are a group of farmers who want to claim fair rights for our agriculture. We have farms that have produced no income for 20 years. We have suffered serious blows in recent years because of the European community, which has imposed absurd things on us.
French farmers are protesting against unfair competition and lack of pay, with protests spreading across Europe. The French government sent armoured vehicles to protect a wholesale food market in Paris, while protests continue in France and Belgium. Police arrested 18 people amid standoffs. The EU's Executive Commission proposed limiting farm imports from Ukraine and loosening green regulations, but farmers remain determined to block highways and ports until all demands are met. They plan to rally in Brussels for the EU summit on the 1st of February. California faced two back-to-back Pacific storms on the 31st of January, and the first storm hit the west coast while the second, a more powerful one, loomed on the horizon. Meteorologists warn of significant rainfall between both the storms, with the second posing a greater flood risk. These storms are also anticipated to bolster water supplies levels, particularly snowpacks in the mountains, which were currently below average. The state prepared for sustained heavy rainfall and snowfall in the coming days.
So when the storm front moves through the area, it looks like we're going to have a 4 to 6 hour period of moderate to heavy rain. And it also looks like we're going to get some strong and gusty southeast winds with gusts of 20 to 40 miles an hour in a lot of areas, some gusts up to 50 miles an hour in the mountains. So not only do we have the rain, but we have the wind conditions, which could result in some tree limb damage, possible isolated power outages, that sort of thing. Now, the moderate to heavy rain, the heaviest will move through the area, looks like late tonight and tomorrow morning across the LA basin and into San Diego County.
India's Sports Minister Anurag Singh Thakur on the sidelines of the closing ceremony of the 6th edition of Khelo India Youth Games heaped praises on women, saying they're doing an excellent job in every field that they are in today. Take a listen.
I think there's no field left where women have not made mark. Every field you look, the Indian women are doing extremely well. From the Air Force, Navy to the Army, you name it and they are there.
Sports news now. England captain Ben Stokes has confirmed that spinner Jack Leach will not be available for the second test in Visakhapatnam starting on Friday. Leach has failed to recover from a knee injury sustained during the first test. Leach hurt his knee while fielding on the first day of the test. The England spinner managed to bowl 10 overs in the second innings and dismissed Indian batter Shreyas Iyer as England sealed a famous 28-run win. Uncapped off-spinner Shoaib Bashir is likely to replace Leach in the playing 11. That's it then in this edition of DD India Live, but do share your thoughts with us on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Anand Bhattacharya from all of us here in New Delhi. It's a goodbye. Thanks for watching.